Peter Bragino. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Appreciate being here.
Good, good. Um, like I had mentioned a little bit earlier, it's been 11 years since we were actually face to face, and that was out in Orange County at a artist conference summit that was put on by Noah Elias with Noah University.
Mhm.
And you and I were both part of that group and attended that summit out there. But it's been a long time being face to face, and I'm glad to be able to do that again at this point in time. And also, I've been, following you right along since then. So
Yeah,
glad you're
same.
here.
Same on this side, brother.
Right on, right on.
Hmm.
So let me just give a short introduction here for you, um, for the audience, so they get a understanding of who you are. So you are a visual artist and creative director, as well as a veteran of the US Marine Corps, where you were an air traffic controller. You're the founder of Bragino.com, which you offer a selection of your work over the last 20 years, aiming to illuminate the soul and highlight our intrinsic connection to the earth's elements, trees, rocks, water, and air. You're a spiritual explorer, and your art centers around spirituality and the wisdom within all things, reflecting your journey of overcoming challenges and finding deeper connections with Earth and humanity. You're a mixed media innovator, utilizing mixed media to create a sense of movement, transformation, employing vibrant colors, intricate patterns, and abstract forms. You're an Indigenous medicine community participant. Your involvement in the Indigenous medicine community enriches your art, adding layers of spiritual insights and practices. And you're also an advocate for self-discovery. Through your work, you invite viewers to explore self-discovery and reflection, aiming to inspire others and to listen to their inner voice and appreciate the beauty around them, which I think is amazing, just from the simple fact that um, I think creativity is a spiritual element in and of itself. Um, us creatives, we're given the abilities from the creator, the originator.
Yeah.
And our work has the ability to help others heal, help inspire others, um, and help others shine and share our work to give meaning to them because that's where they find meaning in our works over the courses of their lifetimes.
Yeah, we hope so for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So what I'd like to do is kind of just do a timeline story of your life and so the listeners get a feel for who you are and what you're all about and different things that have aspected your life and played out in your life. So my first question, which is really my only question that is scripted, is where were you born and what was life like for Peter as a child?
I was actually born in Brooklyn, New York, at a hospital called Maimonides Hospital. But by the time I was one, my father had moved us out to Long Island into about halfway onto the island, about a town called Copeg, and that's on the South Shore, or dead center on the island. And growing up was a lot of I mean, eventually it was like sports. I was a big bowler actually. My
Okay,
family, I was on a bowling team with my family when I was a kid,
cool.
and me and my brother Marino, who was only 4 years younger than me, we were very competitive as far as trying to learn the things that we wanted to learn, and bowling was one of the top priorities for us. So, and we also both played baseball, but yeah, it was pretty much just like a normal kid's life here on Long Island, running around the streets. Hey, we had about 11 kids on my block, so my block was like the block where everybody played hockey and basketball and football and everything in the street. And
Yeah, yeah.
we just had a you know big to do on my block at all times, which is pretty cool. But outside of that, I was always an artist, and I always wanted to, get my friends to draw with me, which was very hard to get them to do. Some of them kind of wanted to draw, but they was like, oh, let's go play, football in the street, or let's draw. So every once in a while I'd get them to draw, but it wasn't enough for me personally.
Right.
Um, yeah, so it was a typical Long Island kid in life. My and mother were very engaged with us, and my father was played music. My mother grew up in a musical family, so my brother Marina was very into the music. I was mostly into art. I played guitar for a little while, but I hated it, so I quit it. But yeah, I was around 8 years old or so that I kind of I found out that I was an artist. You want to hear the story about how I figured that out?
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
So my dad worked for the New York City Transit Authority. He was a track walker, so he used to walk the tunnels of the subways, and him and crew would go in there and fix things that were wrong, at certain areas, track, whatever it was. And he, took me into the city one time to, show me the subway. I've never been to the city, never saw the subway. So, he had kind of like the keys to all the gates. So we just kind of like walked in, got in wherever we wanted to go.
Yeah.
And he took me all around. I think we probably traversed Brooklyn all the way into Manhattan. We seemed to be on a number of different trains. He got me like in the front of the car, so I could look down the tracks while the train was going
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
down. Like all the cool stuff you'd want to do if you were a kid, just experiencing the subway system.
For sure.
So that was pretty magical for me. But it was like towards the end of the the journey. I remember my father. I think it was in Brooklyn. I might have identified the station. I can't remember exactly which station it was, but pretty sure it was in Brooklyn. He took me to the station to see, wanted to point something out to me, show me something. It was like artists had painted like a flip book images on the walls of the subway
Okay.
station. So when the train moved, it looked like the image was moving.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was. I can't remember. It must have been in the actual subway station itself. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to see it, visually.
Yeah.
But I was very mesmerized, by the whole trip in general. And I remember my father, he looked down at me and said, these artists that paint these things on the walls, they don't get paid to come down here and do that. That's just something that's within them.
Yeah.
And it was just like that, like in an instant, like a lightning bolt hit me. And it just says, I just knew at that moment, I was like, well, that's what I am. I'm an artist just like them.
Yeah.
So ever since that point in time, very I wouldn't say diligently pursue my art career because as a kid, I didn't really have that many outlets for art.
Okay.
Besides drawing for myself and being in the normal classes that any of us would be in in school in art class, there wasn't any special programs in my schools or anything like that. But I definitely did well in all my programs, all my art programs as a kid, even
Okay.
through high school. I won most artistic as a superlative when I graduated high school. So
Right.
people knew me as an artist, but it wasn't really like I was being trained to be an artist at any point in time. I was just pursuing it on my own.
Gotcha. That's an amazing story just in and of itself. Holy cow. Um, with your parents being uh musically inclined, did they ever do that professionally at all or to make extra money other than their outside jobs or their daytime
My
jobs?
my mother's father, my grandpa Mario, he was a professional musician, and he had
Okay.
like a three-piece like jazz trio that he used to play with, and he had also had like a music shop later on in life where he was teaching music lessons, and he actually taught my father how to play guitar.
Okay.
So they lived in the same neighborhood together, my mother and father. So,
Very cool. Because a lot of times I can see where uh, familial relations, there's a creative there that eventually that trickle down
right.
gets to one of the younger generations. So that's where I was going with that, trying to see where that trickle down effect was.
My grandfather Mario, he also made art.
Okay.
And I think that trickled down to like my cousin. I remember my cousin Robbie used to draw a lot, and I think that was kind of like, in the family a little bit. Now, when I look at the stuff that my grandfather did, like as far as training as an artist and going really deeply into like a painting habit skill or a drawing skill, he never really went in that direction. He went more like he did like needlepoint things and stuff like that.
Okay.
So it wasn't like he was like a working artist in any sort of way, but I think that you know, was probably inspirationally passed down to us as kids when we were young.
For sure. Now, in elementary school, were you one of the kids that was kind of as a creative and being a lot of times creatives are introverted
Mhm.
versus extroverted. Were you one of those introverts that was kind of just quiet in the classroom or kind of stayed to yourself, or were you a little bit more outgoing, had a group of friends that you kind of were in that mid-level of we're in the class, this is our group, we're doing our thing.
Yeah. Uh, in grade school, I think I was pretty much to myself. I was very kind of like, I don't want to say I had anxiety as a kid, but I was very scared of everything. So I
Okay.
was very,
Yeah.
very sensitive like that.
Yes, yes.
It was like I could cry so easily. If a teacher even yelled at me or said I did something wrong or something like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until junior high that I think, I had my friends in the neighborhood, obviously, that I went, hung out with on a daily basis. But it
Right.
wasn't until I hit junior high that all of a sudden, like a social, interaction with people started to explode.
Okay. Yeah, I can relate to that. I was the same way. I was really sensitive when I was a kid. And just like you said, if the teacher yelled at you or said, you'd start crying. I did the same thing.
Right.
And I don't really understand that element even to this day, other than the fact that that sensitivity within us at that age um, is it's almost like a shock factor type scenario. So any loud noises, anything that seems to be um, belittling to us, even if it's just a correction, a lot of times it doesn't always get portrayed that way from the adult. It
Right.
just gets portrayed as, you know, loud, loud vocal noises coming at you full on.
Sure.
And it hits you in the gut kind of, or in the heart, either one. And it taps into that sensitivity and you just want to start crying because it's a foreign thing in a way.
Right.
So it, with moving into junior high, high school, the interactions there, you said that became started to become a bit more social. Was that due to potentially playing any sports, or was it just to getting at that age where social interaction is just starting to evolve and expand?
Well, I mean, we were like three or four different elementary schools kind of
Okay.
all coming together into a junior high
All right.
so we were being exposed to a lot of kids that we didn't know
Yeah.
yet. And yeah, I was, I mean, the real true story is that I was like kind of like all of a sudden like very popular. I don't know why like
Okay.
all the girls liked me.
Okay.
I was like the guy that all the girls wanted to date, like, junior high. I was like, oh, who's gonna hook up with Peter Bragino,
Right.
I don't know. Somehow they put me at the top of that list, and then there was like a girl that was at the top of the list too, and it was like, oh, are they gonna date one another type of thing? It was just one of those childhood things.
Gotcha.
So I don't know. I just people were very favorable to me in
Okay.
a good way, and I was very blessed to have people feel comfortable around me, I suppose, and
Right.
it was junior high stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Are you you playing sports and stuff with the neighborhood kids out in the street, which, me knowing a little bit about New York City and that kind of stuff, and as you expand out from the main city, it starts to be more I want I want to say rural. It's
Yeah, it's definitely suburban.
you have more houses. Yeah, suburban.
Yeah.
Thank you
Hmm.
for that. I couldn't think of the word.
Hmm.
Um, comes more suburban. Did you start playing any sports in school at all, or just doing the extracurricular outside of school?
I mean, I was playing in an established baseball league my whole life.
Okay.
So, like out in town, I was playing like the Colpig Youth League baseball. So that was always going. And then if when I got into junior high, I was playing on the junior high baseball team. And
Yeah.
uh, bowling. They didn't have a bowling program at my school, so I wasn't involved in that. But I was still bowling in leagues out in town at the local bowling alleys and stuff. I never stopped that. I continued that through college.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. What age did you start playing baseball?
I mean, pretty early, like probably around 8 years old.
8. Okay. Yeah, yeah. And did you start at T-ball first or just regular?
I came in late, so I missed the T-ball era.
Gotcha. Okay. Right on.
Yeah, I went right into wherever was be right next to right after T-ball,
Yeah, yeah. What
Yeah.
straight into the little league stuff.
Right.
The main little league. What position did you play?
Right. So they for some reason they needed a catcher. It
Okay.
was kind of like we need a catcher. You're coming in. You got to be the catcher. And of course, didn't want to be the catcher, but they made me the catcher, and I got so banged up and bruised up in my first year of Little League ball that they nicknamed me Lumpy.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they still some of my friends still call me that today, which is hilarious. But I wound up being a catcher for the rest of my baseball career.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, which was probably one of the most important things as far as building up my self-confidence and giving me a sense of responsibility and stewardship over a specific role in life.
Yes.
I think that was of course, it was very pivotal. I mean, you got to be pretty tough to be the catcher, and it kind of put me in a little bit of a, well, not, it was a leadership role. So,
Yep. Yep, for sure. And that's where I was going with the question. And you hit it on the head. I wanted to have that brought out. The catcher and the pitcher are kind of the two pivotal role players on the baseball team. You're the ones who are interacting constantly. And you being able to see that and learn that early on in your life, I can imagine that helped out throughout the rest of your lifetime in terms of being able to understand the dynamics of being in a position um, that's a bit more elevated, it's a bit more um, focused and in terms of a team type setup, that kind of stuff.
right.
So into high school, you're still playing baseball. Are you playing varsity ball at that point, or are you still
Yeah,
recreation?
I played all the things. Was playing out in town, and I was also playing in school. So I played JV and then varsity.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Mhm.
Very cool. Did you guys win any championships or any of that stuff?
No, we were not the greatest baseball team in the world. I mean, we were a good baseball team, but we were in some we were put into a division that had a lot of teams that would come from like a lot bigger schools.
Uh-huh.
And we held our own, but we weren't like anything that we were gonna win a championship with.
Gotcha.
So
You said you had all the girls looking at you in high school. Did
right.
you have one consistent girl throughout high school, or were you just in
Not
that
really.
phase of let me just take my pick and hang out with who I vibe with?
I think most of us kind of all dated around.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was just like I can't think of too many people that were like solid and stayed.
Steady.
There are a few. There are definitely a few outliers, a handful, obviously, but yeah, most of us just kind of because we were very close. My class, we still are close.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Did in high school, did you have uh an art class or like a home ec class where you were learning something that was creative?
I actually had some pretty good teachers in high school. Thankfully, I had a teacher named Mr. Bender, Mrs. Zistris. I think the two of them were really instrumental. Mr. Bender was very instrumental for me because he really believed in me as an artist.
Okay.
He was always giving me these accolades. He was always telling me he's giving me 100 on everything. He's like, a student does it better than I did it. I'm just gotta give him 100. So he was very like supportive in that way of giving me encouragement of what
Nice.
I did artistically. And then Ms. Zistris actually taught it was like um, it was probably like a graphic design class where we
Okay.
had to like an advertising,
Yeah.
marketing and advertising and design type class.
Okay.
And we had to build ourselves like a book all year of all these projects that we did. And when I look back at that and knowing how I'm a designer now and how I do branding and I'm an art director,
Yeah.
I remember that being like something I was like, because it was very organized. I have a very organized brain. As much as artists can be fleeting and flighty and
Yes.
unorganized. I somehow have a very organized brain. Maybe it was because of being a catcher and having to kind of like, you know, be in
Manage
control of the
everything.
field
Yep.
and
Yep.
whatever it is. I was always very good at maths. So I again, I had just a very mathematical brain at the same time. And I
Okay.
think that class really kind of like tapped into that part of my creativity where it was like everything was like organized and typesetting and making fonts and designing buildings and all the different projects that we did for that year was, I think I really sunk my teeth into that class. And I
Right.
could see how that now is helping what I do currently as an artist. And I still have that book as well, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. E- Exactly. It's I'm real happy about this conversation already because of the fact that it, as I'm seeing these elements pop up of being in baseball, being the catcher, looking at the field, organizing things from that perspective, you've found that into what you do now as well. And being of that mindset of organizational, good with mathematics, having a structure, a structural uh, element about yourself in the way that you operate your art career and that type of thing. Um, that was one of the things that I was trying to get into with those questions was, all right, what are the things in your childhood and early life that are the things that carry over into the present day? Um,
Sure.
so I'm pleased that that's already coming out and uh, being able to be presented to the listeners as well, just for the simple fact of not everybody has that mindset. Not everybody has those experiences that allow for um, that mindset to be developed early on.
Right.
Um, they don't always have the family that's the creative family as well that nurtures that along. It doesn't say no, you got to go do this other thing in
Yeah.
life rather than
I mean, they did that though. They
did
did do
they do
that.
that? Okay.
Of course, every parent's going to be fearful, like, when are you going to get a real job and like art, you know what I mean? That,
Yeah, yeah.
there was support, but then there was also like fear.
Okay.
So it wasn't like, yeah, I mean, there was so many options for me to make a solid living doing other
Okay.
things. I could have done what my father did. There was I could have taken that test and went into the transit authority and made a living doing that. It would have been fine financially. And then we'll get to the time when I was in the Marine Corps. But when I left the Marine Corps, I had a very solid job waiting for me that I gave up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. With getting into junior or senior year, um, I'm assuming you've probably been in your art classes for a little while at that point. Are your teachers talking to you about potentially going to art school, or are you thinking about going to art school at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think we were like preparing me to go to art school because I just basically didn't think I had the money to go to to go to art school because, like it's probably just being naive, but the art school that I'm thinking about is like the art. Wait, what's the one in the city that's like famous art school? It's like a design school. I can't
Parsons?
remember.
Is it
Not
Parsons?
Parsons.
Okay.
It was like it was more like a design school. But anyway, it was one of the big ones,
Okay.
and it was like $35,000 a year or something like that. And I was like,
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
way I'm going. I can't afford art school. Although now I know that there are other art schools that I could have possibly went to.
Yeah.
I just in my brain, I was like, I can't afford art school, so I'm gonna do something else for the time being. Even
Okay.
though I'll always pursue art, but I have to just find a different way.
Gotcha. All right. So then did you think, all right, I've got to go to college for something else, or what were the options at that point?
Well, I went to Nassau Community College
Okay.
to just at least get an associate's degree.
Gotcha.
So, and I did take some pretty great art classes in which is actually evolves the story here. Um, I I tried out for the baseball team there, but I was like missing classes to try out for it, and I was doing really well. I probably would have made the team,
Uh-huh.
but instead, I was like, you know what? My education is more important to me. I don't see myself moving forward in baseball. It's not like I'm
Baseball.
gonna become a
Gotcha.
pro or anything. So let me just focus on my study because that's more important to me. And lo and behold, right after I decided not to try for the baseball team, I caught a flyer on the wall somewhere that said, "Hey, oh, we have a bowling team. Come try out for the bowling team." And I was like, okay, I was about like a 170, 72 average bowler at the time.
Oh, wow.
And with at the meeting, they said, last year in order to make the team, you had to average 190. And I was like, oh my God, that's a stretch. That's like almost a 20-point thing. But I focused, I put my mind to it, and I did. I went through tryouts and I averaged 190 and I made that team. So
Nice.
I was on the actual bowling team for Nassau Community College, which we did pretty well. We went to the nationals on that team and placed fifth in the nationals, which was pretty remarkable. And we had an excellent bowling team. They were really good. The guys on my team and girls. We had girls on our team as well. It was like a mixed. Oh no, I'm sorry. There was a girls team and a guys team, and we would compete. Like kind of side by side in the tournament against our respective group.
Very cool. Um, that's another interesting athletic endeavor in and of itself because there's a bit of calm to it. There's
Mhm.
a bit of focus that has to be implemented there. And then there's a bit of skill that has to be implemented in working with the ball itself,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
There's three huge elements there that I I would imagine because number one, because your family bowled and encouraged that as well, but even playing catcher and understanding the focus needed to be the catcher, but also that now you're moving into the bowling on a team level.
Mhm. Right.
The amount of focus that has to be implemented at that point in time in order to excel is pretty high.
Yeah, I mean it's a very one-on-one type of relationship with yourself and your mind.
Yeah,
So it's almost like a meditation that you have to kind of conquer your mind in a
yeah,
sense to be a bowler on that level. On that you have to really learn how to focus
yeah,
and deal with the self-doubt and the thoughts and all the different things that come up that can really take you out of that structure that's required in order for you to really tap in there and stay locked up.
yeah, for sure, for sure. And as that sensitive little kid, um, moving forward and into this position, did you have any, were you still sensitive at that point, or had some of the sensitivity faded out? Um,
I kind of stepped past it
okay,
back in like sixth grade because I had a friend of mine who lived around the corner from me. This my friend Philip Gallinet. He was a Puerto Rican kid, and the only reason why I mention his nationality is because he was like a real tough guy, like
gotcha.
super tough guy. Like nobody messed with Phil. We call him Philly Phil. Nobody would mess with Phil, and people were scared of him. I mean, for good reason, because he was just crazy,
Yeah,
in the most endearing sorts of ways. But we became really close, and he just taught me how to be tough. He taught me how to basically protect myself and to stand up for myself and to fight
okay.
and all those good things. And I wrapped that shield of armor around me as a protective coat and kind of like carried that with me to protect myself moving forward. So I don't the injured, the scared child was still there, but there was now a defense mechanism built around it.
Yeah, nice, nice. And two, just for the listeners, I mean, most know, but some may not know, but being in the New York vicinity, the boroughs, all that kind of stuff, culturally, it's exponentially diverse. I mean,
Right.
New York City is the hub of a lot of people who are coming into the country from overseas, from other countries, or immigrating here, that type of thing. So that whole area is so culturally diverse that you would interact potentially with all kinds of different ethnicities at that point in time. Am I
Right.
correct with that?
Yeah, we did. We had a very diverse. span or range of people in that I went to school with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we had just about every nationality was, not everyone obviously, but
Sure. Yeah.
enough different. Um, yeah, it was good. It's definitely good that way.
Did um did that diversity of community um have any effect on some of your creativity or thought processes at that point in time?
I don't think so. Like I said, all the way up through high school, I was pretty much just doing what everybody else was doing artistically. I was just excelling and engaged in the process even more. As a matter of fact, it was very hard for me to even think of anything to do. I'd have to ask other people like what their thoughts were like for because I'd be like, oh, I'm thinking about this. So what do you think? And people would give me ideas, and then someone would give me the right idea, and I'd be like, okay, I can, I'm gonna make that happen.
Yeah.
So it was like I had a hard time coming up with things. I wasn't trained how to be creative.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like
Yes.
right now in the way that I teach creativity, it's everything that I what I was taught through my main mentor, Jeff Fisher, is how to break yourself out and how to find creativity, how to play, how to, create organic things and then kind of evolve them into something else. But I didn't have that back then. I just pretty much was straightforward, so
Just yeah. Okay.
I don't even feel like my creative life really started until
Later on.
basically later on, yeah. A little
Okay.
bit when I was in the Marine Corps and then later on when I got back to New York from California, when I was 30 and I met Jeff Fisher for the first time, then I really kind of took off. But I mean that kind of like brings me back to college. The next thing that I was going to tell you that was instrumental in me progressing as a creative was I took an airbrushing class in college.
Okay.
Okay, and I was really good at it.
Nice.
Like the mathematical thing of like this is she taught airbrushing like illustration airbrushing where you had to like make like masks, cut out masks and spray into them. We did like a photorealistic picture of a car and like all these like cool projects that were like it was just really really mesmerizing to me the thing about airbrushing in general.
Right.
And I was so good in the class that she had a friend that was, had like a business airbrushing t-shirts, and he was looking for airbrush artists you know, to help out to make some money with him. So she got me a job with this guy right out of that class. I
Oh,
was starting to work for this guy airbrushing t-shirts, which was like back then it was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and the Simpsons
yeah.
characters
Yeah.
on the shirts. He gave us the paint and the shirts, and we would airbrush them, just like knock them out. He needed like 50 Bart Simpsons. Boom, boom, boom. Like did that all, and he pays $1 a shirt. I was
Oh
making a
my word.
dollar a shirt.
Holy cow.
So basically, I was like an assembly line,
Yeah.
for this guy. But I loved airbrushing, so I was like, this is great. I'm making money, doing
Right. Right.
doing airbrushing. This is my foray into entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, definitely. That's wild. That's wild. And also too, you're learning on the side of it of only getting paid $1 a shirt. You're like, all right,
Right.
this at some point this needs to increase. I've
Yeah.
got to figure that out.
I mean, I could knock out, 50 to 70 shirts a day, so it was like I felt like I was making decent money at the moment, especially
Okay,
for making art.
gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Um, so you're doing that? Are you doing that on the side and going to college?
Yes,
Okay.
basically. Exactly. Yep.
All right. And at getting toward the end of the 2 years, the associate level scenario, um, what's the thought process at that point? Are you thinking, all right, I'm liking this, I'm doing well with it. I've got this other side job doing some airbrushing. Um, what are your thoughts about moving forward? Are you looking at going to a university at that point, or
Well, what actually happened was that my a friend of mine went into the Marines,
okay,
and about halfway through my first year of college. No, I think I was done with my first year of college, and he was coming back from Marine Corps boot camp. So we were invited to a party at his house to welcome him home and stuff.
yeah,
And I would have never gone into the military. That's 100%. If I would have, I might have gone into the Air Force or something like that because my cousin was in the Air Force, and you know definitely not the Marines. I didn't even thought about the Marines. It wasn't even like the thought process didn't even occur to me.
Yeah.
But at that party, he's sitting there telling us all these stories. He's wearing his dress blues, and he was obviously right out of boot camp, so pretty, he was pretty admirable looking at the transformation that had happened to him.
Right.
But and again, I'm still not thinking about anything. But he's just rattling off stories, and his mother pops her head into the room where we're all hanging out, and she was like super proud of him. And she just goes, "You know what? You guys should all think about joining the Marine Corps." And as soon as she said that, again, second time in my life, that lightning bolt came and said, "You're going to be a Marine." And
Oh,
that was
wow.
it. Yeah. So it was just like instant download. Like, oh, you going in the Marine Corps? Like, okay. So I went down to the recruiter's office. I joined the late enlistment program, and I was just basically waiting till I was finished with um my college to get my college associate's degree um to leave for boot camp.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And then with that experience, going from Brooklyn basically to boot camp, where did you do boot camp at?
Boot camp for anybody on the East Coast is Parris Island, South Carolina.
Okay. All right. So how is that in terms of change in scenery, number one, changing culture, number two, and change in mindset as well?
Um, it was very seamless for me just
Okay.
because I was in the late enlistment program for a year.
All right.
Okay, so I was going to the recruiter's office every month, and we were learning our general orders, how to march, do all the things. So I was fairly as prepared as you could possibly be
Okay.
going down to boot camp.
Yeah.
So I felt good about that, and I was just like obsessed with being a Marine. And when I went down there, it was just like I was just in my glory. I was just, I would just ate up every single moment of that experience because it was just like all I wanted to do was be a Marine. So it was amazing for me. I loved it. A lot of people didn't have that kind of experience, but like a lot of people say, what did you think about the first night you were laying in your rack and you were down there in boot camp and stuff? And almost everybody I've spoken to, they all think to themselves like, "Oh, what did I do? Oh my God, what did I do?" You know what I mean? Like, why
Right.
did
Right.
I do this? Me, it was like I was like crying that night because I was like so happy to be there.
Really
It was just like I was just like, yes, like I'm finally here in boot camp. Like it was amazing.
nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. With going through that and being at that point enlisted and in the thick of it at that point, are you looking at different divisions that you could potentially move into or different sections of the military?
Well, but when you take the ASVAB test, then they tell you what you're gonna do before you even go to boot camp.
Okay.
You give them like a I actually they asked me what I wanted to do. I said jet mechanic, like F-18 jet mechanic. I thought that would have been kind of cool, like kind of a
Okay.
technical job.
Yeah.
But I guess I scored very high on the ASVAB test.
All right.
So they were like, "Oh, what did I tell you were going to be, Brigino?" This is right before I left for boot camp. I was like, "Oh, jet mechanic." And he's like, "Nope." He's like, "Air traffic control." And I was like, okay, I don't even know what that is, but I'll ask around and find out what that's about. And when I started telling people that that's the job they were giving me in the Marine Corps was to be an air traffic control, people were like, whoa, that is an incredible job. Like that's amazing that you're going to get that. But um, the thing that probably is good to add to this conversation as far as the development of a mind and the character is that when I was in Marine Corps boot camp, they made me the guide of the platoon, the leader of
Oh,
the platoon.
okay.
Yeah. So I graduated as the guide of the platoon. So I was in charge of the platoon the whole time. So I basically had it harder than everybody else because anytime someone got in trouble and got dug on the quarter deck, I had to be with them getting dug at the same time. And
Yeah.
dug means like physical exercises,
Okay.
whatever, to try
Yep.
to kind of like punish you and break you.
Right.
So I I had that leadership role now, and because I had gone to college, I was already going to. Well, you start out as a private, but I was already going to get PFC, private first class, so E2,
Yeah.
because of my college time. But then because I was the guide, I got promoted to E3 in boot camp. It was just me and like four other guys that the guides of all the other platoons, and we all got meritoriously promoted at boot camp. in front of like the generals came and gave us a medal and all this good stuff.
Right.
My parents got to sit with the generals in the main stands, and we were separated from our platoon for boot camp for graduation day because we were just in that separate thing. So I outranked about 400 people coming out
Wow.
of boot camp. So when we left boot camp, we went to Marine combat training, another month of Marine combat training, and us four that were higher ranking than everybody at the moment, we were then put in charge of those platoons, and those platoons had 100 people in them each.
Oh, wow.
So I was just like thrust into these leadership roles.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
That's interesting. Very interesting because again, I'm drawing a line back to being in that catcher position, right?
right,
Having the whole field in front of you, the whole team in front of you. You're in a role early on in life where it's like we're putting you here, putting you in this position. You got to kind of be the director. So to you and the catcher are the directors, basically.
right,
Um, i- and then two, moving forward, you get into this position of get into the military that you're excelling from a brain function aspect, right? You're excelling there. And so immediately you're just moved right into these leadership positions, which again, that's another mindset scenario where you have to shift your mind into focusing on, I've got to make sure that these guys are doing the right thing. I'm helping them do the right thing, and I'm guiding them to do the right thing for all of us to move forward
right,
and be the best that we can be um, in those positions. So that's very cool, very interesting too. That's the timeline of your life story is putting you in those positions of
right.
uh, higher levels where most people they're at the bottom and they got to work up from there.
Mhm.
You're moving into those higher levels each time as you're going up. That's very interesting. Um, Once you get into the platoon scenario, you got the 100 guys underneath you. What was the next phase of that like for you?
I mean, that was just another month of Marine combat training out in the field. And then once you get done with that, you go straight to your MOS school that's going to teach you your job. So I shipped straight from Marine combat training right to Millington, Tennessee to go to air traffic control school,
Okay.
which
Okay.
was, I can't remember how long that was, maybe 7 months air traffic control school was, something like that.
Gotcha. Did you find that interesting or easy and
Uh,
interesting or
it wasn't easy. No, I
okay.
didn't find it easy. Nobody found it easy. It's not, there's nothing easy about it. It's very difficult. Passing grade at air traffic control school was a 90.
Oh,
If you got less than a 90 on anything, they would give you, I think they would put you into like a consultation to find out what was going on with you. And I think if that happened twice, you were kicked out of the school. So
oh wow.
it was, I never studied so hard for anything in my life. It was insanely intense.
Okay.
It was a very condensed school. It's a shortened school compared to what the FAA puts people through, from what I've heard.
All
So I
right.
think the FAA school might be a full year, and we did it in almost half the time. So yeah, it was intense, but I excelled in that school, thank God.
Nice.
Again,
Nice.
my mathematical mind just
Yes.
can really organize that type of stuff, and you have to be like a type A personality. That's what I found. All the people. So there's a 30% dropout rate at school, and then when you get to shipped to your duty station, there's another 30% dropout rate. Again, that people can't actually pass the qualifications to earn
Right.
themselves a position at that tower or
Yeah.
that airfield. So there's a lot of washout rate in air traffic control. But looking at the people that I know that were air traffic controllers that did make it, that were good at the job, they were all type A personalities. They were
Okay.
very like almost like charismatic, hot dog type, you know, yeah, they were all very, very confident in themselves and what they do. And and it took that kind of personality to be able to work the position because it was very creative in the way that you ran the air traffic and the way you controlled everything.
Okay.
And you were pretty much talking the whole time when you were on position for like 2 hours straight. You would just kind of like, it was like you had to be really, really decisive and direct about what you did as an air traffic controller.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I'm two things I'm looking at again, because I'm a numbers guy in terms of meaning, numerology, and that type of stuff, and I'm drawing it back to you having to hit a certain score on the bowling team in order
Hmm.
to make it there.
Right,
You had to move from your 170, which was your about your average 170, 174, up to 190.
right,
And you were able to shift into a focal point of doing that and making the team, getting that higher level out of yourself. And then now in this military position, as air traffic controller, you've got to have a 90% rate. So another 190 and a 90,
right,
top tier numbers here. You've got to be at that level of focus from a mindful standpoint and excel at that. So you're pushing yourself to excel and move up higher and higher. Also, too, people around you are recognizing that, right? So that's why they put you in those positions of leadership, moving it
right,
up before that. But I'm finding that interesting, seeing that you're from a mindful standpoint, you're excelling. You're pushing yourself harder, farther to attain those levels,
right,
which is it's amazing to have that ingrained in you, and also to being a solopreneur as well, doing your creativity and your art and all that kind of stuff with that type of mindset. So once you get through the course of doing that, you get trained in that. What's the next step at that point?
They shipped me to El Toro, California, in Santa Ana, the
Okay.
also Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, which is the third Marine Aircraft Wing, and you start training in the tower. I got put in the tower. You can either go down into radar, or you can go into the tower. Tower controls all the aircraft in the air, um, departures, uh, arrivals, and any aircraft coming into the airspace or transitioning through the airspace. The radar controls down there helped guide down planes in inclement weather down to the airfield. So they it was like they were talking to them. They were basically guiding them down to the runway. So I was a tower controller, and in the tower, there's four positions. There's data, that is basically the admin that helps the local controller controlling the aircraft outside stay organized. Him and the ground controller, and then you move to ground control. You have to pass that. Then you move to local control, which is the one controlling all the aircraft in the air and taking off and landing. Ground controller controls all the aircraft taxiing and all the vehicles on the runways and on the airfield. And then once you get checked off as local controller, then you have to go get checked out as a supervisor, and the supervisor watches everybody and makes sure everything's going right.
Right,
So
right.
it was a succession of things that you had to get checked off on, and you had to go through each one one
Okay.
at a time. Mhm.
And how long were you in that position?
That takes about a year to get checked off on all the positions at
Gotcha.
the tower. Hmm.
Okay. And then did you um from that did you just continue doing that once you got checked
Yeah,
out?
yeah. Basically, I worked as an air traffic controller at El Toro my entire Marine Corps career.
Okay.
So I was hanging out in Southern California, just right outside of Newport Beach and Laguna Beach. So
Okay.
it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
quite an awesome duty station, and and I wasn't doing any art at the time, but I did eventually get back into airbrushing, and that's how I kind of like kicked off my art you know journey again.
Gotcha.
I was kind of like heartbroken over this girl real bad, and I was like miserable, and I was like, what am I going to do with myself? And I was like, you know what? I really liked airbrushing when I was in college. That was pretty cool. Let me look and see if there's any airbrush companies out here that sell airbrush. I'll go buy an airbrush and I'll get back into it again.
Yeah.
And I found this place called Coast Airbrush, and I went there one day to just check out what was going on, and they were just the coolest people in the world. It was a whole community of airbrush artists that were like
Yeah.
some of the best airbrush artists in the world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
This is this
I
is how I
remember
met
Coast.
Noah.
Yep.
This is
I
how I
remember
met
Coast.
Noah. This is how I met Noah and Steve Van Diemen and Craig Frazier and all those guys. They
Okay.
were all they were all hanging around the shop, and I became friends with them. And they just took me under their wing and, got me they got me the Terry Hill beginner video and, and all the things to learn how to airbrush. And I just dove into that community pretty deeply. And my buddy Frank Serrano was there. He was doing some cool stuff at the time. And yeah, so I became, that was my art community from that point forward.
Very cool. Very
I
cool.
had a little barracks, had a little easel and everything set up in the barracks, and I was airbrushing T-shirts for people and designs, coming up my own designs, and golf shirts and grip it and rip it shirts, and like
Yeah.
Doc Martin Airwave Air Soul freaking shirts for people, like all
Okay.
sorts of cool things.
Nice. So not only is the this California, Southern California inspiring you um, from an environment standpoint, the community of artists is starting to infiltrate into your life as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right on. How many years did you serve in the
I was
military?
in the Marines for 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Right.
All right. And at that 5 year point, do they offer you like to extend any longer, or were you at the point where you just decided on your own that okay, I think I'm done with this. I want to go do this other thing.
Well, they definitely offer you to extend. I mean, they don't want to leave. They don't want to lose you. They put all this time training you, and they've got a good person that knows their job well and is
Yeah.
effective and is moving up into managerial ranks. They
Right.
definitely want you to stay. However, I had already made the decision to get out of the Marine Corps and pursue my art career, like I was destined to as a child,
Yeah.
knowing that that was what I was supposed to do with my life, which was an interesting thing because they hadn't hired air traffic controllers for 20 almost 20 years at that point in time.
Oh
It was
wow.
in the 80s it was Reagan or something. They fired all the air traffic controllers and they hired all new ones from like the military. I think they got them mostly from the military anyway. So these people were there was a hiring freeze basically for the past 15 years. So in 1996, when I got in the Marine Corps, they were just lifting the hiring freeze. And there was actually a woman working for the FAA in our building who I became friends with. She was from Long Island, so we had a rapport that way.
Okay. Yeah.
She pushed all of our applications for me and all my friends through, like
Yeah.
immediately to the top of the hiring, um, you know, system, and we all got jobs as air traffic controllers. So like everybody I was in the Marine Corps with, most of them all wind up having careers as air traffic controllers.
Wow.
But I turned down my job. They were like, "Are you seriously turning down your job? Like, we haven't hired in 15 years. We're giving you a job. You're gonna
Yeah.
make over $100,000 a year. Like, you're literally turning it down." I'm like, "Yeah, that's what I'm
Right.
telling you. I'm turning it down." They're like,
Wow.
"Okay."
Wow. Um, yeah, that's interesting as well because you're being given the opportunity, which is it's been not there, literally. It's been not been available for many years. Now they're giving you the opportunity, saying you're going to be able to make this much money plus, um, and you make the decision to pivot to where your heart is leading you
Right.
with that direct download from early on in the excursion that your dad took you on uh, in the rail system, and remembering that all right, you got that direct download of that's what you're going to be.
Right.
And at this point, you're making that decision to pivot out of a secure paycheck, but move into where your heart is leading you. And
Absolutely.
was there any, you've already started mingling with the community of those airbrushers and everything. Was there any apprehension involved in that pivot, or were you pretty confident that I'm going to be able to do this, I'm going to make it?
It wasn't a thought process like that. I just knew that I was an artist and that's what I was supposed to do with my life.
Yeah,
So it wasn't really a thought that there was no choice really for me.
got you.
Yeah,
Okay,
it wasn't even a choice. I never considered it for even a second.
got it. So you're pretty hard, straight on. This is what I'm doing, no matter.
Yeah, I'm following what my soul told me to do.
Yeah,
That's all there is.
right. Okay. All right. And when you shift into that, are you kind of setting up shop in Southern California, or was there a thought of, all right, I may need to go somewhere else?
No, I moved downtown and got an apartment and set up a, big giant easel in the back in the garage of
Yeah.
the apartment and just started making paintings.
Okay.
Yep.
And was it strictly all airbrush at this point, or are you starting to dabble in some other things?
It was mostly airbrush. I was very heavily influenced by Noah, obviously, because he was my main source of inspiration and watching what he was doing with his career
Okay.
and moving forward and going. So I was, started out doing like more the photorealism, portrait type stuff. But I quickly got away from that and just it just wasn't where I was supposed to be. I started using painting abstractions and all sorts of crazy stuff. I actually had a couple of shows at Noah's gallery, which was an incredible blessing. I didn't even realize how I was always grateful for, being a part of his life and him, allowing me the opportunity to show my work and stuff like that. But yeah, looking back on it now, it was quite an honor to be able to be supported in that way. I always have a fond place in my heart for Noah as a friend.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Nice. Very cool. Very cool. So you're making it as an artist, doing airbrush, and you're expanding out into other mediums, doing a little bit more abstract stuff at this point. Have you gone ahead and set yourself up as a business, or are you just still doing it freelance-ish, kind of taking jobs wherever you can get them kind of thing?
I mean, I did open a, well, I didn't, yeah, did I officially open a business? I can't remember, but I had a website in
Okay.
1998.
Okay.
I had worked with Noah's designer Drew King, and Drew designed me the logo that I still use today, my
Okay.
signature plus this B that I use.
Yeah.
And he designed a website for me, put all my images up there, all the good stuff, and we were kind of like out there doing it. I was working a part-time job as a bartender,
Okay.
to help pay the bills. Obviously, I wasn't really making money as an artist, but I was in pursuit of wanting to move in that direction, of course.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
I did sell most of the work that I showed at those openings.
Okay.
It was very well received.
Yeah. Yeah. And two, just to reinforce who you're referencing, Noah Elias. He's done so many different things over the course of the years that I've followed him. But he's tapped into Disney and he does a
Right,
lot of Disney art. Um, so
right,
people can always just go and Google him and find him online. But
right. And he has the Kid in Me series of his own original series that he created, which
yeah,
was very successful.
yes, yes. All right. So how long are you in Southern California then at that point?
Almost 10 years by the time I decided to move back to New York.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it kind of just smooth sailing through those 10 years, or was there any aspects of that time in your life where there may have been some struggle or some questions in terms of what you're doing or
Right. So, interestingly enough, when you go in the Marines, you can't do drugs anymore, smoke pot or anything like that.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
very, very critical of that. And,
yeah,
so, but I was living on Long Island. I was always drinking, I mean, just like grew up in a party culture.
yeah.
So I went into the Marine Corps on November 17th, 1991. You get out the same day. So I left the Marine Corps 11/17/1996,
Okay.
and I proceeded to, I mean, I was probably smoking weed that same day. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's go, let's
Southern
go.
California too.
Exactly. I was like, I was young. It
Right.
was, I was only like what, 25 years old, something. So, but over the years and trying to navigate the life of entrepreneurial, pursuits and the art business and the whole thing, whatever, it was a lot. It was a lot to manage because I really, at that point in time, I don't think I didn't have the skills that I have now as an artist. Like my skill set, my real skills skills as an artist began when I moved back to New York. So I I don't have the confidence in the ability of what I can do as a creative to be able to diversify my income. And it was a struggle. And I got, pretty heavy into, some drugs and was I mean, people don't really, like I call myself that I was an addict at that time, and people are like, oh, you weren't an addict, but I was a functioning addict. The thing
Okay.
is that I knew my mindset was not right because I was using the drugs, mainly ecstasy, because I just couldn't basically handle everything that was happening to me. And I was almost like I was self-medicating,
Okay.
and looking for like comfort in a
Sure.
sense.
Sure.
But I got, to the point where I was feeling really suicidal and, it wasn't good. And then I wound up getting arrested one day with in possession of some basically acid and ecstasy.
Okay.
And in California, that's a felony possession charge.
Okay.
So I was looking at a year in county for it.
Mm.
However, they had a first time offenders program that they offered me. So
All right.
they put me into a first time offenders program where I had to go to counseling and AA and all that good stuff for a year.
Yeah.
And then I if I was able to do all that stuff for a year, then they would expunge the felony charge from my record.
Okay.
So I did do all that, but at that point in time, I realized that I was working with Noe and we were doing the artist way, and we were really delving into like the deeper inner work at this point.
Yeah.
And Noah was running an artist way group. We ran it kind of together, but it was at Noah's studio. He headlined that thing, and we did that group a number of times, like 3 or 4 times as well. So we got really deep into the artist way, and I realized that if I was really going to make my living as an artist and really pursue this dream that I was told that I had when I was a child, I needed to learn. I needed to study art, and I never studied art. Um, and the thing that I really felt I needed to study was the human figure. I said, I can't go forward as a professional or become a professional artist unless I understand how to draw the human figure. And that was my goal. My goal was to learn how to draw the human figure. And I tried, to find some places out in California, but for some reason, New York and the Art Students League was calling me.
Mm.
They had some programs there that I was really interested in. I liked the methodology and the theoretical application of the. It was a very loose, creative, like very intuitive way that they were teaching people how to draw the human figure.
Yeah.
At least I thought. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna move back to New York. So I had my last show at Noah's Gallery, and I pretty much shipped out about. I actually pushed the show up because 9/11 happened. It was supposed to be in November. I pushed the show up until in October, and I headed back home to get home as soon as I possibly could because it was right after 9/11.
Okay. Gotcha.
You know.
Gotcha. Do do you mind going into a little bit, and you can get as detailed as you want. But you said you you were medicating because you couldn't handle some of the stuff that was going on in your
Mhm.
life at that point in time. Could you give the audience just a little bit of glimpse of what maybe one or two of those things were that was affecting that increase in usage?
Yeah, it was mostly just control. Like I was getting at a point in time, it was like lost love,
Okay.
failed relationships,
Yeah. Yeah.
things that happened in those relationships that were hurtful, and it wasn't when I really peel back the curtain on that, I realized that what I was suffering from and what I was looking for was I had a lack of control over everything because if we go back and we trace my timeline, we see that for, for some reason the world presented me in a positive way always.
Yes.
It always made people like me. It always made
Yes.
me excel in everything. And here I am now at a point in my life where it's like I'm not able to excel here.
Right.
I'm not able to control what happens to me in a relationship. There's this sense of me wanting to like almost like assert some dominance over what's happening in my life, and I can't
Yeah.
because that illusion of control I'm starting to realize is it doesn't work that way. That I need to go I don't want people because at that point in time, it was like I remember my brother said to me one time, he's like, you can earn someone's respect just by looking at them.
Mm.
And what I realized what happened, why that was happening was because I was dominating people. You know
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Okay.
I was a Marine. I was,
Right.
like I was nobody was gonna cross this line.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For
And
sure.
without even conflict happening, I could basically just pull someone's punk card, so to speak,
Yeah.
and be like, you don't want to go here,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And they would have to respect me because of that, because they knew that I was either crazier or whatever it was. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But I realized that that's not who I want to be in life. I don't want people to like me because or work with me because they fear me. I want them to work with me and like me because I'm a nice person to them, you know?
Yeah.
So I had to shift and let go of that mask, that armor that I had placed around myself that
Right.
Phil taught me.
Yeah.
I had to let that go and then expose myself back to the kind person that I was, that young sensitive kid,
Yeah.
and move and approach people with more care and understanding, you know.
Yeah. That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. That spoke volumes. Spoke volumes in the way that you were even saying, drawing it back in time, to feel your buddy giving you that confidence and building that armor, and then up moving forward into the military, you getting put in these different positions where you're given the authority scenarios. Now you're out into the creative world and you're not able to ascend to that authority level, to an extent based on your own perception. Um, so you're reaching out to these other substances to kind of mask some of that internal conflict, that pain that you're experiencing.
Right.
And then you get checked. You get checked by the government, essentially. You get checked
Hmm.
by the law enforcement and of like, hey,
Which is a blessing. Again, another scenario in my life where I knew that that was exactly where I needed to be.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, it was they were I was actually in the jail. They kept me for like 5 days and tell me why they were keeping me. I had no understanding what was going on. After the fifth day, they wound up putting me into like a jail cell underneath the courts where everybody else was, ready
okay,
to get ready to go see the judge and get arraigned for their, whatever the sentence was.
yeah,
And it was in that jail cell with a lot of like orange jumpsuits,
yeah,
people that were actually in county jail.
incarceration, yeah,
Yeah. And they were like, "Oh, what happened? What'd you do?" And they were like, I was like, "Oh, I was in possession." "Oh man, that's a felony charge, man. You're going away for a year. You're going away for a year." And I was like so mortified. And because I didn't want to lose my creativity. At this
yeah,
point, I was playing music again. I actually
okay,
started to learn how to play the guitar. When I was in the Marines, somebody had a guitar a function. He was trying to teach people how to play the riff from Blister in the Sun, doom, doom, doom,
okay,
doom,
yeah, yeah,
that main riff. And nobody could do it. And I was like, oh, I could do that. And I did it. And then he's like, oh, man, you want to borrow one of my guitars? So I got back into playing guitar, which is good. So I
okay,
started to learn music. And I was like, I didn't want to give up these creative pursuits that I was really starting to love.
sure,
And I didn't want to go to jail for a year, that's for sure. And consequently, they didn't even call me the whole day. They left me in that cell the entire day. I was one guy. It was only me and another guy left. It was like 15 of us in that cell.
okay,
And so I was there the whole day, wondering what my fate was going to be, thinking I was going to jail for a year. And I literally, for the first time in my life, I prayed to God, like actually prayed to God with sincerity.
okay,
And I said, God, if you let me out of this, I will I will do all the things. I'll clean my life up. I will pursue my dreams. I will do what I have to do if you just let me out of here. And I swear, as soon as I did that, they called my name, handed me my stuff, and were like, there's the door. We'll see you later. You're
wow,
free. They let me go pending arraignment from the judge. I wasn't going to be arraigned by the judge that day. So they said, well, we'll let you know when your court date is. So I literally walked out into the sunshine at that moment in time.
holy cow,
Yeah.
yeah, that will open your eyes to the potential of miracles
Mhm.
right there, right? Just that story in and of itself. That's amazing. Very interesting. And also too, course correction, another example within your life of somebody looking at you and recognizing potential, right? So at this point, I'm talking creator to creative.
Right.
The creator is looking at you, knowing your potential as a creative, and saying, you've asked for an opportunity. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to allow you to move into this. Um, that's beautiful from my perspective. Beautiful. So you're out, breath of fresh air. I'm sure you're probably feeling a huge sigh of relief at that point.
Yes,
Um,
amazing.
but yet you've still got to kind of hang around because you got to figure out what your sentence is going to be, right? You got to go back to court at this point.
Right, yeah. Yeah, they gave me a public defender, and the public defender basically, made a deal with the judge for the first time offenders program. So that's why I wound up getting that. So
Gotcha.
I spent the next year going to AA. I went through the 12 steps. Actually, Noah was my sponsor
Okay.
for the 12 steps. So I did that whole thing and writing and artist way and all the things. It just started to unravel, like they say, like peel back the onion one layer at a time
Right.
to get me back. And that's why at the end of that process for that 1 year, I basically decided, I need to study the human figure and I'm going to move back to New York to go do it.
Okay. Okay. So when you get back to New York, are you going straight back to your hometown or are you looking at a
Yep.
different area or
No, I went back to live with my parents.
okay.
Yep. Get my stuff together while I was there, and just got some. I don't even know where I was working. I was just working some odds and end jobs, here and there type of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah, I was doing random stuff like laying carpet with a friend of mine that had a carpet business, and just doing some interesting things. But I wasn't back very long, and I went to the pizza place right down the block from my house, Joe's Pizza, and one of my buddies, my friend Tim Cheslock, was working there, and I was telling him, yeah, I came back to New York. I'm probably going to go to Art Students League to study the figure, and because he was an artist as well. Actually, I didn't realize he was an artist, but in the conversation, he told me, "Oh yeah, I make art too," and he's amazing. So he's like, my sister Shannon's going to this class out in Smithtown. It's a figure drawing class. She goes like every Sunday or on Sundays. You should check it out sometime. Maybe you can come next week or whatever. So I was like, oh yeah, definitely, 100%.
Right, right.
So that's when I met Jeff Fisher,
Okay.
my main mentor. And yeah, when I walked into that class, it was like in a ballet studio. It was just a naked model on a model stand in the middle of the room, and just like people with drop cloths all around the model, all on the floor, with like tons of art supplies just spread out everywhere. Some people had pastels, some people had you know um, modeling paste. I mean, it was just crazy, just like a free for all.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, from the second I got in that class, they had me drawing with my left hand and just like doing all sorts of crazy exercises to
Okay.
free my mind.
Yeah.
And that's the way Jeff Fisher taught. He had a lot of different exercises that he gave us. And yeah, I just knew it. I knew, again, another moment in my life where it was like, wow, like the universe has put me in the perfect place. This is like I'm gonna build my artistic, understanding here. This is where I'm gonna be born as an artist right here.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And with that new again stretching you out, making you excel, go beyond what your current level of expertise was, challenging you to go further, challenging your mind to start thinking differently. How is your mind at that point in time experiencing this? Is there any internal um, pushback, for lack of a better word? Is there internal pushback at it, or are you just completely open to, I've been given this opportunity to, number one, not be in jail for a year, come back to New York. I've made this decision. I'm going to do the right things to move this forward. And now I'm learning all of these different techniques. I'm learning to work with my left hand, which is in and of itself, that's a complete shift in brain use
Right.
because, left and right hand brain function is different. Um, and it being wide open, like you're describing this figure drawing class and with this model, and everybody's just kind of doing a little bit of everything, and it's everybody's spread out, and it's not really a structural organization, which is something that you've been used to
Right.
for many of your years up to that point. How is the mind rationalizing that? Is it wide open, cool, or is there any conflict?
No, it's wide open and cool.
Okay.
I'm just like, oh man, because I'm looking around and I'm just like, my jaw is on the ground at some of the things that these kids are doing. They were all like, I was 30 at the time.
Okay.
They were all like in their just high school or graduating high school, going into college right then and there.
Oh, wow.
And they had been working with Jeff for years at this point in time. So they were like, I had never even kept a sketchbook up to this point in my life.
Okay.
I drew had one figure drawing class in college, but it wasn't anything. It was like more of those technical type figure drawing classes.
Mhm.
So I was just blown away by what I was seeing. I was like, oh my God. I was just humbled, like super, super humbled. And yeah, they were like, "Oh, do you like this artist? Do you like this?" I'm like, "I don't even know who you're talking about." They're like, "Oh my God, I gotta show you Toulouse-Lautrec. I gotta show you this guy." It was like they were excited to have me there because I was like this older person that had some sense of accomplishment already in my life as an artist by selling a bunch of work and stuff.
Yeah.
But I was more enamored by all of them and just like, oh wow, I whatever these kids know, I need to know everything they know. I
Right.
need to like just I'm just gonna sit here and just like absorb everything that's going on around me and just like you tell me what to do, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And it was yeah, it was just amazing.
That's a very interesting dynamic as well, is you've kind of established yourself, done a few things in the art world and established a career, and then now you're in this environment where you're seeing all these younger um, kids and students uh, expanding, and you're saying that you want to be able to do the things that they're doing. So it's kind of like a flip-flop, a reverse of your process of what you've already been through.
Right.
Um, Now you're starting to relearn some things, learn new things, so on and so forth. Um, is there any carryover residual from the drug use at that point in time brought back to New York? Is there still any of that in play?
Yeah, I definitely have the draw to still want that in my life, and I did struggle with that for many, many years afterwards.
Okay. Okay.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, it wasn't until I another big shift in my life that I kind of started to unravel that and get rid of that in my life.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So you're in this class, figure drawing. Um, I'm assuming it's for a particular period of time that you're going to it. How does that
Yeah.
how does that play out for you? How long is it going, and what are you thinking of doing at that point in time in terms of shifting your career movement?
Right. Um, Jeff's classes were we were drawing 6 hours on Sundays and then like another couple of hours of critique afterwards. And then on like a Tuesday or one day during the week, we were doing 3 hour figure drawing sessions. And then in the summertime, we would go on location drawing and do outdoor location drawing for the whole summer on the weekends as well. So and there was no breaks, there was no holidays, no it was just all year round,
Okay.
every week. And I was there for, probably a good straight 6, 7 years.
Right.
I'm not thinking about doing really anything at all. I actually got a design job at a screen printing company, being their
Okay.
art director, so designing T-shirts and stuff like that, but using like
Yeah.
Adobe Illustrator now. Now I'm learning the Adobe suite.
Yeah.
I already know how to use Photoshop, but I didn't know how to use Illustrator, so I learned how to use Illustrator. I actually went to like a graphic design school for it was supposed to be like a year program, but like somewhere about 6 months into the program, it was like $17,000. I used my GI Bill to do it. They they the school folded, went under, and they were like, either we'll put you in a new school to finish out your degree, or we'll give you your money back. I was like, I'll just take my money back.
Right.
So I wound up going to that school so I got a computer with all the Adobe programs on it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was kind of delving into that world of design now. And
Yeah.
by securing a job at that, the
Screen
screen
printer.
printing company called Viking, I was able to start, designing T-shirts, designing logos. I was doing branding for people, I was doing a bunch of different things. So I was kind of starting to build my life as a designer in that way. So at least I had like an artistic job, and I was
Yeah.
just basically just going to just classes. Like I'm not trying to rush the process. I just want to become who I need to become. I'm going to stay here as long as I need to in order to make that happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That again too, that's an interesting thing. Um, Started out doing t-shirts, airbrushing them, making a
Hmm.
dollar a shirt.
Right.
Now you're at a screen printing company.
Right.
A little bit different process, a little bit more
Right.
uh, advanced in terms of stylizing, but also too, you're learning new forms of technology.
Right. Very important.
You're right, which is another aspect of how your brain was working growing up. You had
Right.
that technical element about yourself, that focus of being able to see those things and focus on them and learn them rather quickly and move forward with that. At what point with working at the screen printing company are you thinking, you know what, I really want to just do my own thing?
Right. Um, the funny thing is that kid Tim that first got me to go to Jeff's classes with his sister Shannon. I wound up getting Tim a job at Viking as well. So it was me and
Okay,
Tim were working there together, and he
cool.
was he was amazing. He used to do like he does all these like comic book characters, and I mean he's like a phenomenal draftsman, just an incredible artist. So we were having fun working together, but I didn't feel like the job was paying me enough, and I really felt like the value I was bringing was worth probably double the what I was making, and I was it was yeah, I just needed to make more money in my life at that point in time. So
Yeah.
I asked for a raise, to put out like all my accomplishments and this and that, and how I had transformed the place that I redesigned their showroom, made like a big shirt display. I mean, it was like we made some really major moves there, but they didn't feel that they had wanted to pay me anymore. So I was like, okay, I'm out of here. I actually quit that job. I got into an argument with somebody about something. They were trying to blame something on me, and I was like, you know what, I'm out of here. Felt bad I left him there, but he was it was a good place for him to grow as well.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna do my own thing, and it's gonna start getting freelance design jobs and moving in that direction. And at one point in time, I was doing it for a while. I was struggling. I wasn't making much money. A friend of mine said there was a temporary two week gig in the city at a design firm. They needed some extra help, and she suggested that she recommended me to them. So I went in there and did a quick interview, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll hire you for 2 weeks." And then at the end of the 2 weeks, they wound up picking me up full time. So I wound up working for a fairly big design firm in the city called which wound up turning into Ovis Creative. I can't remember what the first design firm was, but somebody broke away from that, and she wound up opening up her own design firm. But I
Okay.
worked for them for the next like 7 years, doing my stuff on the side and then also working for them.
Okay.
And yeah, I was hanging out with a buddy of mine that had a gallery in Huntington Beach. Oh my God, Huntington, New York, and me and him were kind of collaborating on paintings together. So we decided to go into Brooklyn and open a gallery in Brooklyn. And we built out a gallery in Brooklyn, which took about, Jesus, like 9 months to build out. It was some crazy project where we went ham and built like an entire gallery with a loft space and all this stuff. A really cool spot called
Wow.
the C Flat Gallery. And so I was working at the design firm in the city and living at the C Flat and renting it out for events and having shows and figure drawing. We were still continuing the figure drawing on our own at that point in time. So
Okay.
yeah,
It with working at this new design firm, this bigger design firm, did you have any client work at that point in time that was higher end clients, big companies, that type of stuff, or was it a lot of
at the design firm we did. I was the illustrator for like the pitch books.
okay,
We were designing. there was like a PowerPoint person that was designing the like graphs and slides and then text pages for the pitch books, but anything like more esoteric that couldn't be explained, that had to be explained more in an illustration,
Mhm.
I was doing all of that work
Okay.
for the pitch book. So I had like a very specific position in the company.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I was only working there 2 days a week, but I was making good money. So I was able to kind of like, you know, live my life and do the things I needed to do and advance forward creatively in my own sense at the same
Right.
time.
Nice. But that's even interesting in and of itself. You're only working there 2 days a week, but yet it's making you enough money to be able to go off and do this other adventure with your buddy and open up this studio. That it says a lot about the different dynamics within the art world based on whatever industry you're in. Some industries you're in and they're paying you very little money and it's a creative job.
Right.
Uh, Another element of it, you're in another industry and it's just a different level of that industry. You're making way more money. It
Right.
it becomes a situation where sometimes I think it's a defeating for an artist um, to experience those things because you know, a lot of people potentially would get into that screen printing position, right? And working for that screen print company and thinking, this is my thing. This is what I'm doing. They're only paying me this much. This is all that I'm worth, right? That
Right.
that rings in your head like that. You being the person who is has been pushed to excel, wanted to excel, you understood at that point in time your value was more and you were giving them more than what they're actually paying for.
Right.
So you had the ability to be like, you know what? No, I'm going to pivot again. I'm going to pivot out of this, go over here and do this other opportunity, which didn't take up as much time for you but also allowed you to make enough money to be able to go and do this other venture, trying to still moving into the direction of being your own thing, doing
Right.
your own work, being your own entity. Um, with that, at what point with the gallery were you potentially able to shift out of that work with the firm, or was it still a continuous two job scenario?
It was still a two-job scenario. I actually, after 3 years of our lease being up, I left the gallery just
Okay.
because it was a lot of work to have a gallery open there in the city, and it I just wanted some more peace and quiet, and I kind of moved in with a friend of mine, a girl that I was dating in Queens, my friend Jillian, and then still working in the city, and I was just at that point in time. I decided that I got obsessed with I stumbled upon concept design, okay? And like environment design, landscapes, backgrounds, characters, vehicles, all that type of stuff, all the stuff that concept designers do for
Okay.
movies and video games.
Yeah.
I got turned on to this artist. His name was Feng Zhu. He had a school in Singapore called the FZD School, and then there was also Art Center in Pasadena, which where a lot of the concept designers really, cut their teeth and got their degrees that
Yeah.
are in the movie industry. I realized that there's all at this point in time now all these online schools are starting to open up.
Mm. Yep.
So
Yep.
I set a goal for myself that I was like, all right, I can't afford to go to FZD school because that was like $70,000 or something like that for a 1 year program.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I don't have that kind of money. So he actually has a thing called Design Cinema on YouTube where he teaches you concept design, like because he's just trying to make the industry better. And he's a good guy and he's incredible. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna act like everything he puts on YouTube is my school, and I'm just gonna study this stuff like I'm going to his school, but
Yeah.
even though I'm not. And that's what I plugged into. I'm still plugged into that. That's what's driven me from so not only his stuff, but then I also went to other schools. I went to like Noman workshop schools. I went to schoolism. I've taken so many classes over the years. I swear to God, I've taken anatomy classes, character design, environment design, everything you can imagine I've taken and I'm still taking at this point in time. And that's what really that grew me as a well-rounded artist to be
Yeah.
able to do what I do now at this moment.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. Um, you're ever evolving, ever evolving. Um, moving into Queens, um, it, you said you had picked up the guitar again, started learning to play the guitar a little bit better. Is the music scene in New York being of any inspiration to you at this point in time, or is it again just a scenario of all right, I like to play the guitar, I just do it for myself whenever. Um,
For the most part, up until that point, the guitar was, I kind of glanced over the guitar, but the guitar was like my life
okay,
for in California. Once I started learning the guitar, I was obsessed. I pretty much played the guitar every day of my life since that day.
okay,
So it's been a very, very close ally of mine. I've written so many songs, it's ridiculous. So I've always been developing that part of my life as well and learning guitar and understanding music a little bit more. At this point, I'm still just playing guitar. Right now, I play piano and I play a bunch of other stuff now because I've taken my studies further. But yeah, the guitar is still just a companion to me, and I'm thinking about I am starting to write a few more songs that are more currently based. I'm writing songs throughout all these years. I'm writing songs,
okay,
you know. So, but I'm not like in the music scene in any sort of way. I'm not like trying to go out and play. I have friends that are professional musicians that are out gigging and stuff like that, but that's just not something that I'm really interested in at the moment. And yeah, I mean, I was only in Queens for a year, so I wound up moving back to Long Island, back to my parents' house, and hanging out there. So that was yeah, it was a good shift because it got me back even more quiet because Queens wasn't nearly as quiet as well.
okay,
Long Island's a lot more quiet, so I'm definitely looking for that peace. And yeah, just continued just working part-time and studying and now delving back into my art career as an entrepreneur and kind of refocusing on that by itself. I've left the job at the city at this point, and
okay.
I'm just kind of once again working a part-time job and pursuing my design career and my art career on my own.
Gotcha,
Mhm.
gotcha. I think that's another interesting element to what you've done as well is you've whatever it is that you've looked at that you wanted to learn to expand your creative range, you've focused on it kind of laser like,
Right.
which I saw that again when you were trying to get on the bowling team. You did that,
Right. Right.
right?
Right.
You increased that score. You did that going into the military. You're once you knew you were going in, you were laser focused on, you know, making that happen, learning everything you needed to, and then moving up into those various positions across the the career there. And then even when you shifted out of that, you were laser focused again on, I'm going to do this art thing. I'm going to do what I was meant to do, and be creative. Um, and the broad spectrum of the different things that you're able to do, I think, um, if more creatives would be able to look at their life and their abilities, and realize that they don't have to just be focused on one thing to expand what they're doing. There's many different things that they can do, and they can always complement each other, or
Mhm.
they can be just another avenue of if you try to do it, it may be the thing that moves you forward faster.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is um, really special about your story up to this point is the fact that you looked at being able to expand your creative spectrum of skill sets,
Right.
into multiple industries and genres as well. I just wanted to make that a point to show the audience and the listeners that, this is something that you can do. You don't have to think you only can do one thing.
Right. 100%. And, as far as I'm concerned when it comes to creativity in general, is that, if you understand the fundamentals of design, composition, basically composition, you could just make it as simple as that. It it translates to everything.
Right.
If you have a real strong foundation in that way, when you really understand how to compose and maybe how to tell a story or how to drive people to a focal point, that works in music, it works in art, it works in interior design. There's just like composition's everything for me
Yeah.
when it comes to creativity. As I always say, if I'm more proud of being a designer than anything else because a designer is responsible for, how things are put together, how things are laid out, how things are presented, how you arrange things on a page.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, it doesn't matter what it is. You're always responsible for the space that you're given. So,
Right. Right. Absolutely. All right. So you're back at your parents again. You are getting some peace and calm again. Um,
definitely.
are you looking at where your life's at there, and is it with that calm element, are you starting to feel like you want to move into more spiritual things at this point in life, or is there anything that um, created that shift again? I mean, you had the experience when you're in jail, but
Right.
is there anything that you went through and experienced at this point in time that's going to shift you into that more spiritual?
Yeah, I am at this point back in classes with Jeff Fisher again. I'm doing like picture making classes, which is pretty cool. And then so I'm studying this stuff online. I'm with Jeff doing picture making and I'm helping him TA classes as well. But right around this time, the girl that I was living with in Queens, she's gone to California to pursue her further adventure in life. And we're still in touch. We're still good friends. I'm still good friends with her today. And she starts calling me, telling me about these ceremonies that she's going to.
Okay.
Yeah. She's like, I've been going to these ceremonies. It's like a little bit crazy, but like crazy, amazing things are happening. I need to tell you about them. Blah, 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 blah. She's going to ayahuasca ceremonies.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's explaining it to me, and, it sounds pretty wild. I mean, there's nothing really normal coming out of those stories that a normal person would consider standard. And I start looking into it, I start researching, doing my due diligence. What is this? Blah 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 blah. It sounded a little culty at first, but she seems to be getting a lot of value out of it. She seems to be breaking through a lot of walls and really shedding things that no longer serve her. And it seems like a very powerful modality that she's working with, a medicine.
Yeah.
And I'd say about 3 or 4 months into her experience, she says to me, the main medicine woman, Nina, is she grew up in Connecticut, and she's going to Connecticut with the guy that she's holding ceremonies with, this guy Marcio, very powerful medicine man, and they call themselves Pachamama tribe, and they're going to be holding a ceremony in Connecticut like next weekend. She's like, you need to go. And I was
Okay.
like, I was like, I'm there, like, yes. I mean, this sounds amazing. Let's see what's going on.
Right.
So I show up by myself, don't know anybody, just kind of like hang out. Someone gives me a drum, a djembe actually. They were like, "Oh, you should play this tonight." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." I didn't want to bring, my drum. I was like, "Nah, I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna go there."
Right.
And I drank the medicine, and the first night was amazing. It was a 2 night ceremony. So the first night was amazing. It was like I had a joyful time. It was blissful. I was like, oh, this isn't nearly as bad as anybody says it is. This is great. I have a great time. playing the drum, like really having fun. People are enjoying my drum playing and all this stuff. And the medicine says to me, the very clear message is like, you need to shine a light.
Mm.
That's what she tells me.
Wow.
That's what the medicine tells me. You need to shine a light. And I was like, what does that mean? And very quickly, I realized that she meant that I needed to one shine a light on this spiritual journey that I've been on,
Mhm.
all these crazy occurrences that have been happening in my life that have been guiding me by following the wisdom and the whisperings of my soul. Um, and that was pretty much what I got out of it for the moment. So I was like, okay, well, let me start making art that relates to my connection to this crazy spiritual path that I'm on. And the second night of ceremony wasn't wasn't so wasn't so um,
So
peaceful.
blissful.
Oh my God. Oh, have you done ayahuasca?
I have not.
Okay.
I've
Um,
studied a little bit about it though,
all
so I'm
right. I
familiar with
so
what
I,
you're
I did the
talking about.
combo medicine the next morning after the first ceremony, which is the frog medicine, the Amazonian tree frog. They put the medicine on. They burn like holes in your arm, and then
Okay.
they put the medicine on there, and it's like a neurotoxin. It just makes you purge.
Yeah.
It's a very quick, like 20 to 30 minute experience, but it's very intense.
Hmm.
So then I did the second ceremony the second night, and oh man, I was just like, I was way out there, like seriously out there, like lost. I was like, I couldn't talk the entire night. I was purging. I got my butt handed to me basically,
Hmm.
like big time. I
Yeah.
got really like, like witnessing my death type of experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know, the next day after that, I was just so like touched, humbled, touched, like fragile. Uh, it was just like, I don't know. I felt like I was given a gift, a reconfiguration.
Yeah.
I felt like I was plugged back into the earth,
Mm. Yeah.
whereas I was living separately and above and trying to control things, and I was finally like plugged back into the planet, and I was like given a support system that was like, we're here for you, you know, that you're back with us now
Yes.
in that sense.
Yes.
And that started what still continues today to be a relationship that I have with that community. I'm actually an art director for Nina's company called the New Earth Movement. Her vision for the future of humanity, and that a very powerful group of people that she is creating programs for and stuff. And then also my other community that I'm a part of in Connecticut, the Church of Our Ancestors, where I still play music for the ceremonies. But I started basically drinking ayahuasca like every few months, going up there and just working with the medicine. I've been drinking medicine for like, I don't know, like 10, 11 years at this point in time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm like very, very deeply involved. And I have a whole album that I published, out there with all this spiritual music about my journeys with ayahuasca and stuff. And yeah.
Well, very interesting.
So yeah, so this was a big time reconfiguration, and it was the beginnings of me getting out of this grip of addiction. At one point in time, I was actually thrown back into addiction by the medicine.
Okay.
The medicine basically told me like, clearly you're not over this,
Mm.
so you need to go do it more, and let's see how it works, for you this time.
Okay.
And I was able to like get a bunch of, ecstasy and really just kind of go for it. And yeah, at the end of that experience, I basically it was like a sever. It was like a final severing. Like I had just come off like a kind of like a binge on stuff, and
Gotcha.
I was at work at this bartending job that I was doing, and I was trying to run up the stairs, and like my body short circuited, and it was
Uh-huh.
like, no, I don't work anymore. Sorry, you're done. And I was like almost like paralyzed and frozen in place, and I was like, oh shit. Um, and then of course my body worked again, but there was like the medicine was still speaking to me, and it was saying to me like, if you continue further on this, you might not come back.
Mm.
And it was finally, I felt a clear break where it was like, I'm done for good now. Like I don't need this in my life because I've built too many things. I have too many beautiful things that I've accomplished and created in my life. I don't need to be stupid and mess all that up. I still have so much that I can do and so much I can bring out into the world, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The Are you familiar with the Sean Ryan show at all?
I think I've heard of it.
Sean Ryan, he's a former Navy SEAL, podcaster,
Hmm.
ex-CIA contractor, and he started out doing a bunch of creating a community, training with firearms and different things like that. He started his community around that. And then he shifted while doing that into creating a podcast. And what he's done is he's brought on former, fellow Navy SEALs, special operators, all of these different guys who got out of the service and have battled with addictions and um, different things, angers, emotional issues, PTSD, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And um, got to the point where they've started to do heal from these different things. And one of the things that has come up within his conversations is use of ayahuasca, or ibogaine, and they've gone to this facility in Mexico where they administer and do these ceremonies and stuff like that. And they've seen that with ibogaine specifically, it immediately eliminates the addiction,
I've heard that.
eliminates it. And I've been fascinated with that from my perspective because for since I attempted suicide, um, I've been on medication for my depression and anxiety just since then. And at this point, I've taken it for so long that I'm just addicted to the medication. It doesn't do the things that it originally did for me over the years. So
Okay.
I've been, trying to just get the information as much as possible about ibogaine and ayahuasca and the 5-MeO and all of those, all the different plant medicines,
Right.
to look at the potential of at some point in time being able to come off of this medication that my body's just addicted to functionality wise. And it's not huge dosages. It's really low doses to begin with, but I've
Right.
just taken it for so long, I can't just stop it, because I'll either stroke out or I'll have some kind of different brain damage based on what it does. Um, but relating to what you're saying about you were very blissful in the first ceremony, in the second ceremony became the agony element of it. And you felt like you went through this death experience, which they've explained it the exact same way. And they explain it as kind of a death of the ego in a way as well.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times they'll describe it as kind of like flashes of their life stories, just like almost like a movie, ongoing movie.
Hmm.
Um, could you go in a little bit about what that was for you going through that feeling of death type scenario? How was it for you?
I mean, I've had many, many experiences on ayahuasca because I've been drinking the medicines for so long, but
Hmm.
most of the time when it happens, it's usually like me feeling like paralyzed, where I can't do anything. I become like almost like a child again, where people have to attend to me because I'm helpless.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But it's interesting, sometimes you need to just be held and just not allowed to do anything so the medicine can work on you and do what it needs to do sometimes on subconscious levels or physiological levels, whatever it is that it needs to eliminate from your psyche, your body, your you know residual memories. It works in very mysterious ways. It's kind of hard to explain the medicine with words because really doesn't live on this plane. It
Yes.
lives in a space of like transcending words.
Yes.
So like any words that I say about the medicine are just like sort of like a child's way of trying to explain something that can't be explained.
Right. Right. I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah. It's um yeah, I am having a hard time with myself now trying to think of a word to convey what to say about it. It's another realm of consciousness that you're able to experience through that plant medicine. Um, you said you've been working with it for quite a few years now. Is How has that uh, transitioned you within your creative career? You said you did some music with it, but how has it progressed with your creative career?
It's progressed to the point where I've kind of moved into a very specific series that I'm working on.
Okay.
I have an Elder Stone series of these stones that are monolithic, but um, alive with the consciousness of a wise elder.
Okay.
So the stones have a soul, which is a normal concept or way of seeing the world through the ideas of animism or any most native cultures have, see a soul within all things.
Yeah.
But, I've done a lot of sweat lodges, like Native American sweat lodges. They have a sweat lodge up where the people that I work with in Connecticut, and when they put the stones in the fire and then they bring the stones in, and usually I'll often be the person that catches the stones with the deer antlers and takes them from the firekeeper and puts them in the center of the lodge, and
Yeah.
those stones are glowing. So, and then we put the herbs on the stones and let the herbs kind of like go in and help the people. But they call them the grandmas and the grandpas.
Yeah.
They are the elders,
Yeah.
the stone people. And then I have a very particular relationship with stone anyway, because I just love the Southwest desert and I feel very humbled and spiritual when I'm out in those environments. So my name actually means rock. Peter means rock.
Mm.
So I feel like I feel like basically through that work now, that evolution of the work that I do and the message that I'm putting out there, it's become very refined and clear that my work is about opening up to the unknown, the journey that we have in life, our spiritual journey, and realizing that there are wise beings in everything. I've had trees tell me, information. I've had rocks speak to me
Mm.
and download me information.
Mm.
Um, these things are very powerful, and just the idea of a blossoming consciousness, a revolution of consciousness on the planet, I think is something that I'm trying to portray in my work. So through all this work, basically what it's done is it's led me into a place where I understand my story more. I see the threads of my life and the things that I've witnessed, and the things that have driven me and have been important to me, and the messages that I want to bring forward to the world in my work. And the main message is to listen to your soul, because it has it has your truth
Yes.
within it, and it'll lead you to exactly what it is you need to do in this world, regardless of whether or not that looks like what other people think or what you might have thought. It's a roundabout way sometimes, but it always leads you into the right places. And yeah, it's an important message, I believe, that I've been given, and that I've luckily been able to stay clearly aligned with my whole life.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Beautifully said. Um, and there's a lot of power in that. Um, the the connection to the earth, if people were able to understand that a little bit better, um, I think the world would be a little bit more of a peaceful place. Um, if we could get back to some of the understanding of the Native American culture that the earth is part of our community. Um, it's part of what um, enhances our lives. Um, then we might see a whole lot of different changes take place that would be very profound.
Absolutely.
Do you do you feel at any point that the medicine will say to you, you don't need me anymore? You've had enough, you know enough.
It could. However, I've kind of transitioned from someone who sits in a ceremony and takes the medicine to a person that takes more of a serving dose and then just plays the music for the ceremonies. So
Okay.
I'm more in a helping or role
Facilitator.
now. Yeah, I'm more of a facilitator now.
Okay.
So I'm being called to serve in that way and to play I play the live music for the ceremonies that guides people on their journey.
Got you.
So I work with the medicine in a different way now, more of a service role rather
Okay.
than someone that needs to unravel the things that because I'm really good about taking what the medicine says to me and the guidance that it's given me and implementing that in my life and in my work so that I don't have to keep going back to be, reminded of what the truth was.
Right.
I'm literally following the advice and doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing according to the messages and the download information that I've been given over the years.
Right. Right. That's interesting that you say it that way because again, I'm drawing lines back to your whole life story of those people that have come into play for you that have given you specific information and you're like, okay, boom, here I go. I'm just going to do this. Follow through on it, do exactly what needs to be done. Um, that's very cool. Very cool. With with your artistic career at this point, do you still have odd side jobs here and there? Or are you full on just doing your own thing and putting your own works out there?
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I still have a part-time job where I, make like cash on the side type of thing.
okay.
And I I think the main reason I have that at this point is because I I was a designer for a while and just doing design work for people, but I made the choice to transition over to my fine art career and to bring that more into the forefront. And anytime you transition out of something that's making you money to something that will potentially make you money one day,
Yeah,
it's it's an easy thing for me to just like go grab a bartending job or whatever it is, anything that I can do part time to
sure.
make sure that the cash flow remains consistent enough that I'm not feeling as much stress from the roller coaster of trying to establish myself in a new space. And and with that new fine art career, I've also opened up more of a teaching platform as well. I have an online membership program for creatives to help them kind of move on their journey as well. So between the two things, I'm kind of like building a new base of my reality as far as art's concerned. And I think once I'm able to really establish the two things, I think that I probably won't need the side job anymore.
Hmm.
It's almost feels bad. Oh, feels sad to want to give up a side job because I do enjoy, having that, sense of like hanging out with people and just doing like a job that's really not stressing me out. And I'm
Right.
just like, okay, we're hanging out, you have some coffee, do this, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
like, there's something cool about that as well that I kind of like, I'll have to probably wean myself away from that, but I think I'm going to be busy enough that I don't really, I'm not going to have time for that anyway. So I'm just
Right.
going to have to, I'll be focused on my students and I'll be focusing on the work that I'm creating for, say galleries and things like that. So,
Got you. Got you. Yeah, again, too, I'm seeing that that ability to pivot, um, that pivot into this new role of what you want to do with your career, but the willingness to be able to, go back and do, bartending or the side jobs or whatever. You see that as not uh, a downward movement, but just a lateral movement to be able
Yeah,
to make you rise again, so to
absolutely.
speak. Can you talk about your community that you're building? I don't know that I know about that.
Yeah, no, I haven't really launched it out to the world yet. I'm just opening up a few workshops. But for the past year or so, I've been secretly building a creative community on the Mighty Networks platform.
Okay, yeah,
So yeah, I, it's called the Born Creative membership. So it's a monthly membership,
right.
and inside that membership, I have a couple of three different threads. One thread for inspiration, where I can kind of like feed into the community and give like mini lessons on things that are inspiring me, or they can post things that are inspirational to them as well, and we can talk about it and kind of unpack those things. I have a questions feed where anyone can ask a question, and I will do like tutorials based on their questions,
Yeah.
like paint overs of their work or anything like that that they want to work on. So I'm gonna have the needs of the community start building out the teaching portion of this membership, and then I have an art share feed as well where people will post their art, and um, and then if they feel stuck or they don't understand how to take it further, I can again do paint overs of my on my iPad of their work and kind of illuminate sort of like unravel the mystery of where it is that they're stuck. um, it, in coordination with that, I have an artist reference library that I've been building. So I have just inspiring artists and different types of work in all different fields, from architecture to illustrators to painters and costume designers, all sorts of cool stuff.
Very cool.
And then the last part is a tutorial section where the tutorials are going to build, and the tutorials will be sketchbook reviews of other artists' sketchbooks. There'll be the paint over sessions when I show people things, an image analysis, kind of like what makes this painting great section. I think there's one more section. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, I just have a bunch of different ideas in there to kind of start building out the community. And I've got my first few members in there now, and I'm running a workshop with a bunch of other members that are getting 6 months of access because they're in the workshop. So, just looking for people that are just just like just like me, that they're like, I love art. I want to know more about it. I don't necessarily understand exactly what it is that I'm doing on the page to the point where I would like to. And, please help me unlock this for myself, because it's all attainable.
Right, right. Uh, Very cool. Very cool. That's kind of what I'm doing with the artist recovery as well. I'm on Mighty Networks, got a community that I just launched.
Oh, you got one too?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So
I
how
love
can
Mighty Networks.
yes, it's very very cool. A very interesting platform in terms of the way it's structured, the bells and whistles that it has for you, that kind of
Yeah, and
thing.
they keep adding them too.
Yes,
I'm,
yes.
I'm like I'm making badges like crazy. I'm like, you
Are you?
you made 5 compositions? Oh yeah, I'm sorry. There's one more element of it too. There's a live stream twice a month where we're going
Okay,
to draw together, and I'll be able to help people to kind of develop their natural language of creativity by doing these exercises that I have for them. So
cool.
that's kind of the most important part of the whole thing.
Beautiful,
'Cause
beautiful.
I want to get people making finished pieces of art, very small ones, just like let's get them done, 20 15 minutes and boom, and then let's talk about it.
Right, right. How can people find your community?
I can provide you with a link for it, to
Okay,
the plan page to check that out, and you can see all the benefits that you get from joining the creative community.
cool. So we'll have that down in the show notes. That'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come over there and check it out myself as well. But I think that's a great place for us to end this here today, Peter. Again, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you sharing your story. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Feels good to have these conversations and to kind of look at the threads, like you had
Yes,
mentioned in the beginning. It's really important to see those threads and see how these little things can eventually add up to kind of creating the entire puzzle of the lives that we want to live.
absolutely. Absolutely. And for all the listeners out there, remember to listen to your heart and be kind to your mind. Thanks, everybody.